We're not just normal people who have church as well.
Yeah, it's not just an addition.
It's not just an addition that we fit in.
We're back here on the Chip Lunch podcast. Welcome.
Yo.
Back here with Ethan.
Yeah.
Part
three.
Part three. You're
Crazy.
getting close to these parts.
Yeah.
Not in length, though.
Not in length, no.
No.
I am a long boy. So I am longer than Fee.
A long boy.
I'm a long boy.
You're a long board.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not long bored in this episode.
I'm just like, there's not many trilogies that are great. There's a few that are excellent.
Oh, okay.
There's a few that
There
are
are
excellent.
a few that are excellent. That's
Then
true.
there's a-
Yeah, I like to think of myself as more of a Lord of the Rings,
Rings.
than a Cars.
Then a Matrix.
Or a Matrix. Yeah.
What was the other one you said before?
Cars?
Cars.
Oh, yeah, it does get worse, Cars.
I haven't seen the third one.
Cars
I've
3
never
is
watched
actually
it.
okay. But Cars 2 is...
Cars 2
is just...
Cars 2 is the one where they go around the world, isn't
It's
it?
got nothing to do
spies.
with Cars 1.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
just a spy movie.
it's not
Yeah.
as good.
Made the main character.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Mater does.
They should have just made a Mater movie
Yeah,
about spies.
exactly.
to be
That's what I
honest.
was like.
That actually would have been fine.
It would have been.
Whereas the third movie is about racing.
I've never
and it's
watched
cool.
this.
It's about Lightning McQueen's getting old.
Yeah,
Is the
I don't wanna
premise.
see that.
And so he like, yeah.
I hate old people.
But I don't think,
want him in the peak of his powers in my head.
and I don't think they like nail it as much as they do with Toy Story 3, which is that same kind of idea of you getting too old for this.
Toy Story 3.
Toy Story 3.
That's a trilogy.
That's a
a
trilogy that
masterpiece.
absolutely
And the
slaps.
fourth one I will not mention.
I saw a very famous director online being
It's
like
Quentin Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino. He's like, Toy Story 3 is one of the greatest trilogies of all time. I'm never watching Toy Story 4 because they finished it and it's perfect.
Yeah.
Is that the one? What's 3? Is that where they...
The daycare.
The daycare.
Oh, I find that one creepy, though.
Yeah, but
Like,
it's,
I know what
but
you're
the
saying.
resolution at the end.
It's so good.
Won't
It's
spoil
so
it
good.
for you online.
It's very
I
good.
watched the first 3 Toy Story movies.
They're amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the kind of trilogy this will be.
Yes.
Oh, this podcast.
Yeah,
This
series.
podcast.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Yeah, well, they have very good resolution at the end.
Huge.
Yep.
It's gonna be
Ethan
amazing.
dies at the end.
Spoilers.
No, it's a new
Yeah.
owner.
Gets a what?
It's a new owner.
Oh.
That's the Toy
Yeah,
Story.
I get it. I just didn't hear what you said.
Oh, yes.
Speak up. Speak up
Speak
a
up.
little. Oh, let's do
Okay.
accents again.
No.
No, never again. Never again.
So where are we
he
up
knows how
to?
to play
We're
the
talking
game.
about video editing.
Yeah, we're just talking about creativity and talking about
Creativity.
sacrifice and
Yep.
talking about failing.
How does that translate to the things that you've done in youth ministry?
Yeah,
You've got to experiment heaps in youth
yeah, I think
ministry.
that it was
I think
just
your youth ministry experience was an experiment to
yeah,
begin with.
yeah. So
Well, because we're starting the church and
Yeah,
well, but
establishing
even
it.
before that, I got to year 6, and with Dad as the youth pastor, he looked at me, and I was in at Guymer Anglican, there was this thing called Drop Zone, which was from like year 1 to year 6.
Oh, was
Like
it?
it was on a Friday night. It was massive. It was really fun. But by the time kids got to year 5 and 6, they started dropping off.
Yeah.
And
So
so
it
by
was split in 2 and then it came back together.
Sure, I was never there.
I
for
was
the-
only know that. I was never there. I had that conversation with Tim a couple of weeks ago.
There you go. And so when it was, so year 5 and 6 kids just didn't go by the time I was there. And so by the time we got to year 6, there was no year 6s left. It was just me. And so Dad saw this and was like, why don't we start a youth group? I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, let's just invite all your mates and we'll go hang out on a Friday night for just year 6. It was,
You talked about this in part 1.
Did I?
And my gripe was you were like, there was a song.
Yeah.
And we would sing the colours. I think it
Yeah.
was Eye of the Tiger. And then you
Yeah.
said red, red,
yeah. What is it?
green, green, red, red, yellow. It smells like Teen Spirit.
It is Smells Like Teen Spirit, of course.
I was
it is.
like,
What an idiot.
I had never played Guitar Hero, and I was like, I know what that rhythm
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
That
yeah,
smells like Teen Spirit.
Yeah,
was
yeah.
that red, red, yellow, red, red, green, green?
Oh, and you
whatever
thought it was Eye of the
Yeah,
Tiger.
yeah,
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know
like-
why I said that. Yeah, yeah.
I was like, it smells like Teen Spirit.
Thanks for the correction. But yeah, so
If you
that
want
was that.
Sing Guitar Hero.
From there, it was we've just been doing youth ministry
Blowing up the
from when I was
rockets.
in year 6, and it was always iterative because then in year 9 we planted a church and planted a youth group once again, and it all just reset. And then by the time I finished high school, we were resetting again and doing stuff again. So yeah, it's been really fun to do all that. which is really cool.
Now that you're at college, right?
Yep.
First year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that you're glad that you did the thing that you said of getting all the experience first before going to college?
Yeah, totally. A lot of the people I talk to, there's a pretty specific trajectory into college that most people take.
That's why I asked the question. Yeah.
They do, like a lot of the guys have done uni and then
Into MTS.
into MTS, which is, I don't know, what does MTS stand for?
Ministry
Training something. They do 3 years of that,
scheme or something. I don't
something
know.
like that.
Scheme
And they-
sounds like a scam.
It
might be,
They've
yeah, ministry
changed the
training.
S. The S was something. I
Yeah.
don't remember. Yeah.
It's for
Anyway, they
vomit.
do a few years of MTS.
Snakes.
Yeah.
And then out of MTS, through MTS, they get prepared for college.
Yeah.
If they want to go, and they usually do, and they go into college out of that. And so one of the things I've noticed in that is that the people who have done that have some really awesome foundational stuff that's really, really excellent. But I am not missing much of it. And actually, I have a lot more ministry experience than all of them do, which is not I don't mean to say that as a bragging thing. I just mean to say that as something I've observed is it was really good that I took the time to not go.
Yeah.
Why did you
I
say
was
that,
going to
though?
go a year earlier,
Yeah.
but Katie got sick, and that also was a helpful bit of time just to spend a year married and looking after her. And yeah, it was really good.
Sorry, it sounded like you just spent 1 year being married and now you're not married. But why do you say that it was good? Like you're saying, like, yes, I'm glad I did it, but why do you think that's good going into college with that life experience rather than not?
I don't know. I think you look back at, how old am I? I'm 25. You look back at 18-year-old me, and I didn't think I noticed when I was 21 that I was changing lots. But if I look back from 25 me to 18-year-old me, I've grown a lot.
Right.
And I think that growth has been really important to get to be to where I am now. But like if I was in it like 3 years ago, I don't know. Like why is the 6 jobs that I'm working helping me prepare for college? They're not really, but but here I am now with actually a whole bunch of stuff under my belt that I didn't have when I was doing that, before I was doing that.
And taking that ministry experience into college, do you have a different perspective to some of your peers?
Yeah, I think also because the ministry experience I have is with Soul Revival.
Yeah.
And so the way I solve ministry problems is very different to some of the guys around me.
Yeah, right.
And girls around me. So for example, I had a really fun conversation where we were given a ministry problem, and these we were a group of 3, and 2 guys just like kind of ended up getting really fired up about it. And it was
what's the issue?
I can't remember. It was a really intentionally fired up, like spicy one.
Right.
It wasn't spicy, but it was enough
Was
to
it like a
get people.
theological issue or something?
Yeah, like it was a ministry practice issue.
Yeah.
About mission and discipleship.
Right.
And stuff. And doing that cross-culturally and whatever. And they were just getting really fired up about it. And they then, after arguing for ages, were like, "What do you think, Ethan?" And I was like, "I think we should just, like, it would be solved if we were just friends with each other. Like that actually doing that as a ministry would work." And they went, "No, that wouldn't work," and went back to talking to each other. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, I can't do it justice now because I don't have the question in mind. But in my head, I'm like, it actually would have solved everything that they were talking about.
Yeah.
Was if you did it in this certain way.
Like have a good relationship
Yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah. If you just are actually friends with the people you're doing ministry with, that would have solved the problem that this thing was raising.
And I think it's just that my experience at college is a similar thing where we've had a level of responsibility and ministry experience that's just a bit different to maybe the experience of stepping into. A lot of people become student ministers and they go to a new church and it's like a new environment, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I preach twice a year. How much do you preach?" And I'm like, "Well, I run a gathering, so
Almost every
I
week.
could preach if I wanted to as much as I want." And they're like, "Wow, I can't believe they let you do that." But it's because we've grown up in relationship with the people that we're doing ministry with, and then the bonus of a being in a church that's looking to implement something like the shock absorber is
Yeah.
we have lots of flexibility, but then also I have flexibility to do that, but I also know that I can ask heaps of people at any point for some wisdom and make those mistakes and move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
And it's just a slight, and it's not a bad or a negative thing with other people at college. It's just a different experience
Yeah.
of moving forward.
Yeah,
that way.
which is why this conversation comes from. It's really good that all the experience was had before college,
Yeah.
because it doesn't necessarily mean like in that conversation with those two guys, I was not better than them
No.
in my solution. I
You just had done something different
Yeah.
to bring that to the conversation.
Yeah.
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 Even though I was ignored.
well,
Like, no, that wouldn't
Well, you
work.
still got to bring it to the conversation.
yeah. I brought it up.
Yeah, right.
And I think like that, like you've said, I also didn't, I was going to go to college for a year and put it off for a year because of external kind of circumstances of being like, something happened. I'm like, do I really want to go to college? But that, I think, having that year for me as well, for me, that year was the first lockdown. And so that was really pivotal in terms of doing ministry and making things happen and being super involved, because we were just interns at that point.
Yeah.
I think in the
Yeah.
first one
We
were just Berean interns there,
Yeah.
doing that stuff. And I think that was really important, having that experience and then stepping into college. And I think it both helps you solidify the things that you actually do want to hold fast to. I think being older, you're like, okay, these are the things I actually don't want to let go of. And this is the stuff that I'm keen to think about. You just have a better, clearer idea of that when you've had a bad boss, when you've had to wake up and go to work, when you've dealt with stuff in your life, or for me and Eth at the point again, when you're married for a little while.
Even pastoral issues.
Yeah, exactly. And it just helps you have a bit more of that perspective.
Yeah. Oh, it's just a fascinating way to ask. Like, it's a similar thing of like, I think we don't realize how much youth ministry prepares us for other things as well.
200%.
Yeah. 200.
Like, I think we've had this
Sorry,
discussion
that's
in a
cool.
bunch of different chip lunches, but like, youth ministry preps you for so many things.
One of the things Dad says is that one of the best ways to learn how to preach is to teach scripture.
That's fair enough.
And like they look like very different skills, but actually they're not. And that's really cool. And so having done that for years, I can come into preaching with a different way of doing it than someone who is learning how to preach from Moore College or from MTS. They're both very structured. Here's how to do a thing. Whereas Dad's tactic was get in a room with 30 teenagers and do they listen to you at the end of it? Are they still listening at the end?
Yeah, and it's not like a either or oil or water.
No,
It's kind of like
Yeah.
two different colors of Play-Doh that end up making that fun brown color.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. With the little with the
You know,
cool,
like,
with the cool swirls in it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like,
That annoys me heaps when Play-Doh
See, I'm
gets
like,
mixed.
yeah, let's
Yeah.
go. Put it together.
yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense though, because like when I've coached football in terms of adults first, and then now coaching kids for the last 5 years, it's made me heaps better coach. That makes a lot of sense in terms of your scripture. Is that, what is it, the Feynman technique? I think is that from Richard Feynman. Is if you can't explain this concept to a 5-year-old for them to understand it, then you don't know it well enough.
But it's even like if you can't for scripture, it's like if you can't explain, like if you can't explain Jesus to a 5-year-old, think about like that's a useful skill to learn. But it's also if you can't explain Jesus to a whole room that aren't listening, that's a whole different. Like,
Yeah,
you know
it's a
what I mean?
whole different thing.
I remember the first time I preached on Saturday night, and I took a pause in between a sentence, and it was quiet. And I was like, it was off-putting as.
Oh, okay.
Because I was so used to like, will you leave a gap? And it's just like murmuring
Noise
and noise.
fills
You know
it.
what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
There's a gap, noise fills it. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
so like, I think, like it's a very useful skill to have, trying to explain stuff to people who don't care.
Yeah.
And Eth, your public speaking experience that we talked about in the first episode would help you in terms of preaching and things like that too.
Totally.
Yeah. No, I enjoy watching you watching. I also listen to you preach. It's fun. And to see you also grow up doing that too, that's really cool actually. Like, when was the first time you preached a full sermon? Do you remember? Because you were very young when you did it.
I have it on my laptop. I have my first sermon on my laptop, but I don't know when it was. I'm not sure.
Wasn't a pack, was it?
I was too young.
Yeah,
I was too young for that. That was there was a Young Gun series then, but I was not.
Yeah, I just remember you doing it, and I'm like, wow, he's young and he's doing a great job. That's what was cool about it.
I think I was 18.
Yeah, sick.
Yeah, 18, 19.
I think that you also, with that public speaking experience and then doing it so early, it's very impressive for you to be wanting to keep doing that. There's not many people at your age who would happy to get up in front of a big room and preach or even speak or do anything like that. So I remember being really encouraged when you first did it. That was sick. Talk about, you mentioned last week, Katie. Tell us.
Right, sure.
Tell us about who's Katie.
Who's Katie? Who's Katie?
Yeah.
Katie is my wife. She's lovely.
And tell us about lessons from marriage and stuff like that too.
Yeah. Where our marriage. So if you want to listen to how we met, etc., go to her episode.
It's very funny.
Really funny.
Yeah, it is very funny. It's probably one of the moments I've laughed the most on this podcast. That and your dad telling the story about, you telling the story about your dad when your mum was about to give birth and he hit a dog on the way.
So good.
He had to change his shoes because his shoes smelled, and then he went into the shop, and then he hit a dog. He hit a dog on the way.
And he grabs the dog as he gets out of the car, grabs the dog either side of the head and goes, "Go home to your mother, dog. I can't look after you. Go home."
Yeah, I think they're two. They're up there. They're both up there. Those two stories.
They're very good. So yeah, definitely go back and listen to Katie's. That was on
Lou's episode.
Yeah, Mum's episode.
It's also on the intro. The new Chip Lunch intro. I was just losing it on that joke.
Yeah, so funny. Yes. So funny.
Now back to Katie.
Yeah. If you want to hear that story,
because she met you and there was a light behind you, and it's like
And she said,
"Isn't it like
the light turned
on the road to Damascus?"
And she said, "Oh, I'm blinded, like saw Paul on the road to Damascus." It was the worst joke ever. It was shocking, but it actually was really funny.
Yeah, I remember me and Gemma enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really, really funny, and there's actually a really funny edit done on that. I'm pretty sure by Eck, which is very entertaining. So if you want to hear about that, that's cool. We've been married for 2 years now. I think we started dating in 2017, and then we got engaged when I finished uni. I can't remember what year that was. At some point, and then which is before COVID.
Yeah.
No, we got engaged during COVID in the middle bit.
Yeah.
Because
in between lockdowns.
In between lockdowns. We got engaged in between lockdowns, but for some reason church locked down. Church was still locked down.
We weren't allowed to meet together.
We weren't allowed to meet together. It was going to be the week. Anyway, it was a weird moment. We were going to be able to meet and then we weren't. So it was towards the end of the first lockdown, I think, if I remember correctly.
I think that's right, yeah.
So what year was that? 2019? 2020?
2020.
Sure. And then we were engaged for a year and a bit, I think, to get us over to the January of 2022. And we've been married since then, which has been really lovely. Learnings from marriage. I tell people sometimes when they ask, I got 4 weeks of what I expected marriage to be. And then it kind of took a pretty wild turn health-wise. We're practicing the in sickness or in health pretty early, which has been a really interesting few years. And I can talk about that if we want. I think that'd be really interesting to talk about. But before I get there, we got married and then we went on our honeymoon for a week. And it was lovely. It was just, we didn't even go anywhere nice. We were saving, we spent no money because we'd spent all our money on our wedding. And so we went to just under Newcastle, the most romantic of places.
You tunneled underneath Newcastle?
Yeah, into the caves. No, to Lake Macquarie. and we just got an Airbnb on the water, and it was delightful. Like people are like, oh, that's a lame spot. And I'm like, we didn't go anywhere. We just sat for a week in a room on the water watching boats because there happened to be a boat race happening at the time on the lake. And so we were just watching boats. And we went to the movies. I don't know. It was a lovely week. And then straight out of that, we went on church schoolies, which was the best. Heaps of fun. That was Aurelia's year. Was it the next year? Who was it after?
It wasn't the big one, was it? It was who was Aurelia, Emily,
Anna, Liam.
Yeah.
I think it was that year because they did it in January.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just naming.
Yeah. So that we went on schoolies with a whole bunch of crew, and that was really fun. And then we were married, and it was really cool. We moved into South Village. South Village is really lovely. It's a really awesome spot. And around Easter time. So, and then Katie got COVID from schoolies. That's why I said schoolies.
Yes. Oh, it was that schoolies.
Yeah. Everyone got COVID. All the girls got COVID.
We got
That's right,
the
yeah.
lady variant of COVID.
Yeah,
where
yeah.
Somehow all the girls got it, and none of the guys got it.
Yeah.
It was so random. And like guys and girls were in cars together. Like it wasn't like we'd been separated the whole time. Like it was just anyway, so the lady variant of COVID hit. And so then she's sick for a week, and then we get a few weeks, and then we go to the Easter show. And just before the Easter show is the marker, but I think she got glandular fever a week or two before that. But from there, that kind of kickstarted this pretty steep chronic fatigue decline. And yeah, she just got really sick, and she just couldn't do stuff that she could usually do. She actually is really funny when she got really tired. She doesn't do this as much now because she's getting a lot better, which is really lovely. But she gets this drunken slur that comes on when she's really tired, and she talks slowly, and she gets really quiet, and like it's very silly to watch, and I can't describe it in its full hilarity. But I often laugh at her for it, and she's so tired that she's like, Ethan, stop laughing at me. Which is only funnier. But yeah, I think we were able to be married, and we are still married, and into Katie's sickness, we were still married. It was just a bit different because I was now working 4 jobs, something like that, 4 jobs, and caring for Katie. Because it was, straight out of uni, I was working a whole bunch of different jobs, and then I was caring for Katie and doing that, and that became really hard. So I had to drop all of the jobs bar 2. I was doing church and this Christianity Works job, and they were just the best to be able to look after Katie in. Because the Christianity Works job was working from home and was really flexible hours. So I could do all the cooking and cleaning and still look after Kay and all that. And then, a little while in, like a long while in, she went to a blood doctor. Sounds like a vampire. What are blood doctors called?
Dr. Acula.
What are they called?
I'm thinking.
I'm wrong because I got in trouble because I called them rheumatologists.
Yeah,
but it's not.
Isn't that
They're not a
heart?
rhomba.
Rheumatologist.
Isn't that heart? Rheumatologist?
I don't know.
Is that blood?
I think it's blood.
Okay,
I don't know, but you say it sounds like you're saying Roomba. Like
I
the
did.
vacuum.
Well, that's the problem. The problem is I said it wrong.
Vac.
I said it wrong, and I was so tired that I thought that was the funniest thing I've ever said.
Hematologist? Hematologist?
Yeah, so hema is like hemophilia.
Well, I don't know
like
where I
blood.
got rhomba from.
I thought that was like
Anyway.
rheumatologist. That's something, isn't it?
Yeah, it is something.
Yeah, Rooma. RHE.
Rheumatologist.
Anyway, so we went to a doctor, and the doctor was really helpful and got some blood tests and actually read them differently. What's
A
the
rheumatologist is a doctor that diagnoses and treats arthritis and other autoimmune and inflammatory diseases of the joints, muscles, and bones.
There you go. So that's what happened. She got diagnosed with spondyloarthritis, which is like an arthritis of the spine. And actually, she's totally chill. Like it's not there's no pain. There's pain, but it's not arthritis pain. It's just a muscle soreness and there's a few other things diagnosed there as well. But what we thought for ages was chronic fatigue, which every conversation you have with someone about chronic fatigue is
Fatiguing.
this could last
Forever.
forever.
Yeah.
So it's like you could be like this for 10 years
Yeah.
and more. And that's a really scary thing. And so it was actually a huge blessing about a year in to get diagnosed with an arthritis thing, which means that you can start like treating stuff.
Yeah.
And so she's on a cacophony, a whole lot of
A plethora?
a plethora. She's got a whole bunch of different medications that help with that.
Cacophony is loud noises, like
yeah.
lots of loud
Yeah,
noises.
lots of noises, which is why I stopped.
Noisy medicines.
Noisy medicines. And that's huge. So that's been really lovely to, and I wanted to say all that as one, because that's the story over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Katie getting sick, and then Katie getting a little bit better, and then Katie getting a little bit better, and then getting diagnosed, and not actually much changing, but getting a little bit better and a little bit. So that's been the trajectory, which has been really good.
It's good that she's getting a little bit better.
Yeah. It's really cool because you look at this kind of stuff and you're like, and Katie's just like, this is the worst. And it is the worst. But she's like, I'm not getting better.
Yeah.
And
that
you
would
look
be
back
the
and you go,
hard thing.
actually, if we're looking at you 2 years ago, like huge, not a week ago, but 2 years ago, huge difference. And that's really cool to be able to see at the moment. But
Yeah.
yeah.
I really like value how like solid you are to be there for her all the time with that stuff. And I think your example, such a young man going through things like that, trying to support your wife really hardcore, is a really good example to all the guys that you're leading and to us, even though we're married. I mean, Beck, your wife,
We're married.
we are married, as joined at the hip. But like, even, for example, Braden, like Beck, she has a couple of autoimmune stuff going on as well. Like I think it's important to show how much you guys, or draw awareness to how much you guys work hard to look after your wives. I think it's really, I think, we're meant to show how we're meant to sacrifice ourselves as husbands. I think that what you guys are doing, and especially like we're focusing on Ethan right now, but I think that's a great example of what you're doing. And also I really enjoy the positivity that you speak about it with, though, because I think that would really help her as well.
Oh, it's
The positive person over here, positive puppy.
But it's not even like, I try to be positive and I can be positive, and that's something, again, we've talked about on this podcast that I am naturally able to do, which is a huge blessing. But like Katie's a pretty positive person, but when you're stuck in a room, like 4 walls for like an apartment is,
Yeah.
and even if it was in a bigger house, she still would have been hard, but sitting in an apartment all day,
Yeah, definitely.
being unable to do anything but watch movies and do puzzles is really like draining on the soul. Like it's a really, like, I don't know, we talked about cold showers and going outside and going for runs and all stuff like that a couple of weeks ago. And like all that fitness stuff is really important, and socializing is really important. And as soon as that's all pulled out from under you, and like ministry is really like all these things that are really good for you, as well as they are good for other things, they just the rug gets pulled under. And so actually, it's actually really, it's really hard for her to be positive in all that.
Oh, it would be.
Because,
struggle
of course,
so hard with it.
And I think that's means that it's not always positive, and that's okay. And that's something that I'm not very good at. Not very good at the negative side of stuff. But one of the things that this has taught me is that actually you need to sit in it sometimes.
Yeah.
You need to sit there and be like, this sucks. Let's pray about it and let's get sad about it together. And then
You mean like rather than pushing it away?
Yeah.
Like just kind of ignoring it, or just kind of,
or downplaying it.
Yeah.
Like that's something I could be guilty of doing, particularly early on. And yeah, I think I've had to learn to sit there and that's been really good in all of people's struggles that I've been able to talk into or be a part of.
Mm.
Just to be able to sit there and be like, actually, this does suck. This is really hard. Let's think about this together and love each other through this. That's been what has been doing a lot with Katie, is just being able to go, yeah, this really sucks. Because, like, I don't know, lots of stuff falls apart because of that, when suddenly you can't work and you can't see people and you can't do stuff.
Yep.
And yeah, so
Definitely.
there is great hardship. But at the same time, I am not. I say this knowing that the answer is, oh yeah, but you've suffered because you've sacrificed and stuff. But I'm not really the one suffering. I just have to do more work. But that's not necessarily suffering. I'm still married to the person I love, and that's beautiful. And actually, she's the one who's going through a really hard time. And so realizing that too has been really important. Just to be like, Ethan, pull your head in. Like, yeah, you have to do the washing again today, but it's not that hard. And actually, she's really gracious, because the sink's been a mess for 3 days because I've been writing an essay, and instead of going, Ethan, can you do the thing? She's like, she hasn't said a thing, because I'll do the thing, and she can't. So stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's been really good to learn from and understand. Yeah. I think one of the things I have learned, and maybe you can talk to this, Braden, but I think chronic illness is really, we don't really know what to do.
It's like a wave.
Yeah.
Just kind of like, never really goes away, but like, it obviously doesn't go away, but like, yeah, it's hard to like, yeah, like, just sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Sometimes you work really hard to get better at something and nothing comes of it.
Yep.
Yeah. So
Sometimes you're crashing on the beach.
well, it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, it's a tricky thing. And like, I'll whinge about my shoulder over the last little bit because it sucked. But I knew that there was a pretty solid endpoint. I know exactly, like, unless I do something stupid, I know when the endpoint is. And I think health is such a different thing when there's no easy endpoint.
That would be hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and then being there for someone when they're going through that, I think is really different as well. Like, it's not like, oh, I don't know.
I can go visit someone and then be out of it again.
Yeah. Like I can go see someone, and I can then see them again in a month's time and be like, oh, actually, or maybe even 2 months, I'll see them again in 2 months' time. And for them, nothing's changed. And for me, I'm like, oh, look, I'm doing all my life stuff. It's great. Which is great, because that's just what I've been doing. I've been doing all my life stuff. But yeah, I think it's really something I don't know if I've done enough thinking about or figuring out, is how to look after someone with a chronic illness when I'm not married to them. Like, because I get to see Katie all the time. And so I get to look after her all the time. But I wouldn't know how to look after someone if they suddenly dropped off the face of the earth tomorrow. Because that's what Katie did. She dropped off the face of the earth in most people's eyes. And everyone has been lovely and helpful and looked after her. But yeah, what do you do as an individual in an attempt to support and look after that? And it moves into figuring out, what can churches do to help that, right? Like when we pray for people who are sick because suddenly someone's got cancer, that's awful. And we should pray for that at church. It's really important. But how often, like at what point do we never pray for Katie again? Like, or for the other people who I know are at church who have different chronic problems. And it is, and I'm never diminishing the other side of things, but I'm just like, we're really good at looking after the person who has just gotten sick as a society. This is not necessarily a church thing. This is a societal thing because it's immediate. But it's a bit harder to look after the person who is going to be and has been sick for a long time. And yeah, I'd love to figure out how to make that happen, because that's a really fun problem. Like, because I say fun problem because it's a problem that is a whole bunch of people trying to figure out how to love someone better. I think that's cool. I think that's also really biblical. It's like they're the best kind of problems to be able to go, oh, how can I love this person heaps? I think that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I think it also this hardship and how much closer it brings you to God, and then also like how much it makes you a better person as well, to help other people, to understand, have empathy for others, understand that other side. I think that's, especially like you're saying, fulfill the dream of becoming a pastor, which you already have to a degree, but it's the same. There's going to be so many people. Like when you graduate and you're going to be a pastor and everything, like you're going to have to really come up against those situations.
Yeah, I think something I've realized is that for those of you guys who've been married before I was married, I didn't realize how selfish I was.
Yeah.
In that all the decisions I made were for me.
Yeah.
And like I didn't need to think twice about, like, even coming home and having dinner in the fridge because mum and dad have cooked it and I'd forgotten to tell them that I wasn't coming home and they've just left it in the fridge for me. And so I've been able to, at 1 a.m, eat my food out of the fridge and go back upstairs and go to bed and crash. And then it doesn't matter if I wake up at 10 o'clock the next day because all I'm doing is missing a bit of uni or whatever. Or I can start my flexible work from home life later or whatever. Coming into marriage and realizing, oh, actually every decision there's another person that I need to make a decision with and for. And then when they're sick, it actually goes, oh, actually I need to make more decisions than I was doing before. Because now it's like, oh, if I go out with my friends, that decision was, hey, Kay, can I go out with my friends? Like whatever, or come with. Like we're both invited to a thing. And now it's actually, if I leave, you're alone. And that is really sad. And so I have to figure that out. And then there's a whole bunch of, that's just one example, but there's heaps of different versions of that, that come into it. So yeah, learning about how much I need to make decisions for someone else has made me admire the people that have been doing it a lot longer than me. Because there has been people doing it heaps longer than me. 2 years with an actual solution on the horizon is nothing in the grand scheme of some of the conversations I've had over the last 2 years. And so, yeah, once again, very blessed with that, which is really cool.
Looking back over your life, you said you're 25. What would you now tell your younger Christian self, which you've talked about a lot of things already, but what would you like to tell your younger Christian self? You are going to be a pastor?
I think I'd tell my younger Christian self that my optimism is a strength and that I need to I don't think I ever took it for granted, but I didn't realize that not everyone thought the way I thought when it came to that angle of things. And I think it would more be an encouragement than a correction.
Yeah.
Because I think I'd do everything the same. I'd make the same, like you've got to fail early and fail often. You got to make the mistakes you make. But I'd encourage my younger Christian self and say, like, yeah, keep smiling through all this because stuff is going to suck. Stuff's going to be really fun. And so keep that grin on and keep going. And it'll be okay.
And I think a lot of your life experiences from the beginning have kind of taught you that.
Yeah.
God has taught that to you through those experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's been a big part of who I am, is realizing that I think there's been a few arcs, right, of like, realizing that you can smile in everything and be optimistic in everything, but then realizing that optimism isn't about just being happy over anything else. Like you can still be sad and you can still have hard times, but the optimism is actually not just joy. It is instead knowing that there is going to be joy, and seeing joy when there is none, in the knowledge that it is sadness. There is sadness. Like I think, yeah, it's okay to be sad, and it's okay to have a hard time. Like this has been a very somber third episode, but I'm like, this is just what life is like, and it's not the end of the world, and it's not actually sad. It's just a bit lower, and that's okay.
You said that about your optimism. Is that sometimes you're saying that your optimism, like your pursuit of optimism, like cause you to not deal with those kind of sadder moments, maybe the way that you thought you should, or
maybe, I don't know. I think, but I've heard about people talk about toxic optimism, which is this idea that like people can come into situations and like I'm really sad, and then Joel comes in and it's like, oh, everything's okay, it's all going to be fine.
Yeah. I
And
know
that
someone that says that
doesn't affirm my sadness at all,
Yes.
and doesn't actually look after where I'm at all.
Yeah.
And it's also not good for you as the toxic optimist, who is not acknowledging the fact that sometimes stuff sucks. And I'm a Christian, so I know that sometimes stuff sucks. Like it's actually a part of my theology that sin exists, and the creation groans under the weight of it. And so, however, it is also, I think optimism can be godly in that it is if it is a remembrance of the hope that we have, that in amongst any kind of trial and suffering, we can find joy knowing that God's got it sorted in the end anyway. And so I think what I'd avoid is, I don't know how much I have been toxically optimistic. However, I'm sure I have. And I'm sure I've been super annoying. And so instead it'd be just like, yeah, optimism is a strength, but it's okay to be sad, and yeah, keep trying to be optimistic in it rather than optimistic over it and instead of it.
Yeah, I think you should keep your optimism, and I don't think I've experienced a time where you've been toxic and inappropriately optimistic. But I think sometimes I see from you going, and as you get older, going, it's okay to sit in the sadness rather than push it to the side. That's sometimes where I often see you doing that, and I think there may have been learned things from, like, you had to deal with so much stuff as you grew up that makes sense. But what the difference is, in my mind, is that you're iterating on that. I think that's what's cool about you going, well, maybe that wasn't the most healthy thing to do, but now I can, and there's all these lessons that God is showing you, like as you spoke about with Katie, and plenty of other stuff, like it just iterating and all that kind of thing. And again, this is why we do this podcast. It's just like, yeah, we're looking at like all these things you've talked about over the last 3 episodes. And the tagline is stories of Jesus changes everything. But that's what he's doing.
Yeah.
That's what you've shown us in the things that you've talked about. And it's funny, you don't even realize that until you talk through it, and then you look at it over this big wider lens, and you go, oh, look what God's been doing. And I think you're just a huge blessing to us.
Thanks, man.
As a friend, or as a church, or just as a person. Like, I really, really value you, and have ever since, especially we've become closer friends since I've become on staff. And I think sometimes I need your extra dose of optimism sometimes. So I really appreciate that.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, Brady, you got any last words?
Oh, I don't know. What do you say to wrap up Ethan's podcast?
Time to wrap up the chips.
I don't know. We've been very good friends for a while. You inspire me constantly.
Yeah,
I think the fun thing about when we get to work together, which we do all the time, is I think the balance of us being able to talk about just the silliest stuff in the world, but also the most serious stuff in the world. And I think we have a fun line where people are constantly like, oh, what are you up to? And we're like, oh, we're solving the world's problems. Because that's honestly, like, I think what I really enjoy getting to do with you is problem solve. It's what we do constantly. And I think the fun thing about the teamwork that we've been able to have together doing that is that there's no ego involved.
That's true.
There's no bad ideas. There's no like, oh, I need to hold on to this because it's my idea. It's just like, collaboration at 100%, which is what I really enjoy. And
Because you're
fun.
friends, as,
Yeah,
as
exactly.
Ethan said before.
That's
it's
it.
just like, no, let's do that. Oh yeah, let's do that. Oh, what about this? Oh yeah, actually, that's a good idea. Like,
Yeah.
and I think I've really enjoyed getting to do that as friends, as interns, as staff. Like, I think it's really special that we get
And
to do
later
that.
enemies.
Oh yeah, I look forward to that. And like, yeah, you were one of my groomsmen, I was one of your groomsmen. Like, it's really lovely to get to do that, but also do ministry together, do life together.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's really special.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Love you, bro.
Love you too.
Yeah.
Thanks, gents.
No, thank you.
Very encouraging.
Gents, I like to call them a gent. Gents. I always think gents is just the word they use for toilets. It's always gents. It's not gentlemen. It's
Thanks,
gents.
toilets.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Back to toilets.
Thanks to toilets. Yeah, Pam, if you're listening, we're back to toilets again.
Full circle.
Full circle. Well, that, I mean,
It's like
the toilet is a full circle.
It's like crabs. Like the crabs are an evolutionary. Not that don't go there.
What are you talking about?
The evolutionary crustacean always goes back to the crab.
Yeah.
If you look at it's
Does
also
it?
yes, it always goes back to the crab. Also, it's not make Braden laugh. People who engineer transport,
Yeah.
it always goes back to the train as the like optimal
that.
transportation thing. So does this podcast always goes back to toilets.
No, that's a relatively recent thing. But no,
Not chips or Jesus.
yeah. Chips, Jesus, toilets.
Oh, jeez.
Chips, Jesus, toilets. And I think that's a good note to end on.
Yeah, on that
Yeah.
note,
Thank you, Braden.
Thank you, Joel.
And thank you, Ethan.
thanks guys.
And thank you, Hudson, behind the camera.
You.
And as always, thank you to our listeners and watchers. We're going to finish with a one-way. Catch you later. One way.
One way.